And on the XAUUSD, for this week so far, if you look at the chart from an holistic point of view, you will see that price action has been quite choppy, which could be an headache sometimes when you try to position yourself ahead in a direction and price action continue to oscillate around that area, taking you out, bringing you back in at every point in time. It could be very, very tiring sometimes. But one thing that for sure here is that if we are very patient to wait for the market structure to mature into a tradable opportunity, you would find it very easy to identify trading opportunities. So the week started with a bearish note here in this market after citing the consolidation phase between the 1980 and the 1970, and even within that channel we already started seeing selling pressure around that area, as we saw price action found lower highs at every point in time. Price action is trying to break out of the structure. We saw that the highs become lower at every attempt. Then with a buy stop order above the structure and a sell stop order below the 1970, we had our sell stop order trigger just on Monday morning. We saw the sell stop trigger there and price action drop to the downside. And I think on Tuesday morning I told us all that the transition here could lead into a bullish momentum. As you can see, we identified a reversal pattern on Tuesday's trading session. We saw this reversal pattern here. We saw price come back into the structure. Price was unable to break the previous low, giving us a new high, a higher low here. And you all know what we look out for whenever we see a higher low in the market. It's a sign that buyers are gradually coming in this market. And during our live session on Tuesday, I told us all that we shall be using the neckline of this reversal pattern, which coincidentally falls along the 1964 and also shares a confluence with that bearish trend line, which has been resisting buy pressure since the beginning of the week. And what we agreed on Tuesday is that we are going to be having a buy stop order above the 1964 to join the bullish momentum to the upside. And on that note, we saw this happen. Buy stop order triggered, and in fact price action moved about 120 pips in our favor before this bearish momentum happened. And during the live session on, where was that? I think on Thursday, that was yesterday, I laid emphasis on what has been happening between the 1964 and the 1960. Now, what was that? You see, after the breakout of the neckline, the 1964 here, we saw our price came back to do a retest of structure, which actually falls in line with the theoretical expectation of the reversal pattern like a double bottom structure. So we expect that price will obviously come back to do a retest of the neckline, which it actually did, though it did break down the neckline a couple of times, and we saw it going to as far as the 1960 zone before we started seeing another wave of bullish momentum. And what we decided here during the live session yesterday that is to acknowledge the between the 1964 and the 1960 area as a significant demand zone, which could be a platform for another wave of bullish momentum in this market. And now, to further buttress this and to be able to make us feel comfortable whenever we buy the XAUUSD yesterday, I was able to identify another yardstick that we shall be using to guide our trading activity during the New York session yesterday, and that is the bearish trend line that we have here. So when we connected the series of lower highs here, we have this bearish trend line figured out, and I told us all yesterday that as long as price remain above both the bearish trend line and the 1970 zone, we want to feel comfortable in our buy position. And with the situation of things right now, we saw how price action broke out of the bearish trend line yesterday, came back to retest the structure here during a couple of hours into the New York session, and boom, we saw our price action climb significantly well to the upside. So it now depends on where you have entered. If you had entered from here, you would have had more profit on this one, and if you had entered from here also, you would have been profitable. So from here, price moved about 140 pips in our direction, and from this point at the retest of the trend line, which also shares a confluence with the neckline of that reversal pattern we identified earlier, you would have over 200 pips in profit. And for those who have been part of this move yesterday, well done to you guys for being on standby to have caught this trading opportunity. Now, with the situation of things right now, some of us will have taken our profit on this one. Some of us will still have this trade running. And if you have this trade still running at this particular point in time, I will be suggesting that you want to be securing it by moving your stop loss accordingly. And the most appropriate area, I think, based on this current structure, is to move your stop loss into somewhere right around the 1975 or below that structure. As you can see, we saw buy pressure resume around this area, leading into this bullish candle that we have been seeing here in the last couple of hours. Now, with a position secured already, what is going to be our next line of action at this point? Well, we need to take into consideration what has been happening here since the early hours of today. And one thing that we should have noticed here is that, remember that since the beginning of the week, this was where price action started at the 1980, which happened to be the resistance line for us at the beginning of the week. And look at what has been happening around this area since the later part of the New York session yesterday. We saw how buyers are trying to break out of that structure, and every point in time price action does that, we have been seeing rejection of that level at this time. We saw the same thing happen here during the early hours of today, and like 4 or 5 hours ago, we saw another attempt by the buyers to break out of that structure. And in fact, this led into this bearish engulfing candle, which for me at this time needs to be taken into consideration while trying to make a decision for our next line of action here. Now, if you look at the structure critically well, you will see that price action appeared to be transitioning into a potential reversal pattern in the form of a triple top structure at this particular point. So if you look at the resistance line here sitting around the 1985 level, I want us to be identifying this level here, using it as a yardstick for a potential opportunity to add more buy position if price action ever breaks out of this level. So we shall be identifying this area, the 1985. So I will just highlight the resistance line here. Okay, so we label it 1985, and this will be our resistance line for today, which is the highest point price action has been in the last 11 hours or so. So going into the New York session today, a breakout retest of the 1985 would have taken out all the sell positions here, and if that happens and we see more liquidity in the form of a retest of structure, we shall feel comfortable adding more position to our existing trade. So for those who are still buying these, who are already in this buy position, I hope you had moved your stop loss, and then let's wait out and see how price action reacts to the 1985. If it breaks out of that structure, then we want to be joining a bullish momentum to the upside. However, like I said earlier, we want to take into consideration this bearish engulfing candle that we saw here today. And for me, this bearish trend line, this bearish engulfing candle breaking down the 1980, which we could actually use as the neckline of this potential triple top structure that we can see here. So if you look at the structure here, the price action appears to have broken down the neckline of that triple top structure, potential triple top structure in the meantime. And we can see price coming back to do a retest of this level, though this candle is still running right now, and it still has about 6 minutes 30 seconds to go on this one. So we need to see how this candle is going to close. Will it close in the form of a shooting star candle, or a candle that has a character of setting pressure around that area? And in fact, to even get a better perspective into this, when this candle closes, we will need to scale down to a much lower time frame, probably our 5 minutes time frame, to see how the candle closes around that area. Now if we start seeing something like selling pressure around that area where buyers are finding it difficult to climb above the 1,980, then we will be anticipating a sell-off in this market. So we would have had a confirmed reversal pattern. That triple top structure would have been a valid one at that point. So let's see what happens in the next couple of hours around this area. So however, the way price action reacts to the 1,980 would now determine if we are going to be selling the XAUUSD for today. But remember, I told us all that we could buy above the 1,985 if a bullish momentum continues and price action continue to find higher highs in this market. So these are the things we shall be looking forward to here on the XAUUSD for today. So that is my view here. If you have questions, feel free to drop your inquiries in the comment section. Now I just caught my eyes just caught something here on the XAUUSD which I think is necessary I share, and this will also help us to feel comfortable in whatever position that we have running in this market. And when I looked at this chart again, I saw this structure here which I think we can use to guide our trading activity for today. So we have some couple of breakdown of that structure, but we can still use it to guide our activity. So let me thicken this a little bit so that I can emphasize its importance using this current market structure. Okay, so we have this trend line here. So if this continues to the downside and a further breakdown of the trend line happens, then we want to be adding more sell position to our existing trade in this market. So let's be on standby for either of this opportunity, and you want to be using that trend line as your yardstick for trading activity today.